told my wife her outfit is part of why girls' night went wrong, but now she won't even talk to me. I, 32M, and my wife, 33F, have been married for the last 3 years and together for 6 total. We have had a fantastic relationship up until the last 2 or 3 months. When we got together we were both very clear with each other that neither of us like clubbing culture / bar culture etc. We're both homebodies, and that's part of the reason why I think we've been doing so well up until this point. The last 2 months or so, 2 of my wife's recently divorced friends, we will call Sarah and Kate, have been sort of urging her to partake in going to clubs a few times during the week. They've also been rubbing off on her a little about FOMO, and that she's wasting the best years of her life sitting at home. This has led my wife to have a pretty big character flip. When they first started going out together my wife still dressed pretty conservatively, and only went out once every few weeks. Now it's become a Friday, Saturday event, with new clothes being bought fairly frequently, and becoming more and more revealing. When I asked my wife about her behavior change, she said she just doesn't want to let Sarah and Kate down, and they both need a lot of support right now. Fair enough, I said. This last weekend though, it sort of reached a tipping point. My wife doesn't work, I'm the sole income in the house. She stays at home and is working on starting a craft business. She's very talented, and the prior agreement was, she takes care of the house, cleaning, laundry, and the pets, and then when I get home I'll cook, take care of the garbage, and do the cleanup after cooking. She has been neglecting both her startup and the house. I got home from work Saturday, the house was in a sort of state of dishevelment, and she was sitting on the floor doing her makeup. I noticed she had a bodysuit laid out, so I picked it up, and noticed it was damn near completely see-through. When I asked about her sheer bodysuit purchase, and if she really planned on wearing that to the club tonight, she said yes, and asked if I had an issue with it. I told her I found it to be very revealing, and that I was uncomfortable with her going out like that with her single friends to a club. I also asked when we could get together to get the house in order, and her words verbatim were I'm going to wear what I want. I'm not going to let you trample over my autonomy because you're insecure. Either you trust me or you don't. The house isn't my problem either. You live here too, and you're more than capable of cleaning up the place. I stood there stunned. I was very hurt because I've never heard her speak this way to anyone, much less me as her husband. We almost never argue, and this was the first time I can recall raising her voice since we've been together. So I said, do you want me to go with? And she said no, because it's a girls' night out. I said well okay, it seems you've got it all under control then. Enjoy yourself. I'm going to pick up and head to bed. Since your friends are seeming to take priority over our household, then maybe they can look after you tonight. And I headed to bed in a huff. It wasn't super mature of me to see, but I was in the moment and frustrated. About 2 hours after she leaves, I get woken up by a few texts from her saying she was having a good time, and that they were heading to another club down the road. I said okay cool, and went back to bed. Maybe another hour or so later, I get a text from her saying that guys keep trying to talk to her, and keep staring and ogling her, and chatting her up. I responded with yeah, there's a lot of creepy guys out there, especially when they're at the club. A few minutes later she texted again, saying that someone had grabbed her bum, and that when she told the bouncers they said they didn't see it happen, and since she didn't see the guy, couldn't point him out. I told her I was really sorry that happened to her, and that people should learn to keep their hands to themselves. I asked what her friends thought and she said Sarah told her it was no big deal and that Kate told her if she was going to keep whining, then they'll call her an Uber so she doesn't drag down the night. So I asked if she was coming home and she said she was going to stick it out as it was still sort of early. Around midnight she calls me a few times. I missed the first 2 because I was sleeping, and as I go to call her back, she calls. I answer, and she's sort of like panicky. I asked if everything was okay, and she told me that Sarah and Kate met some guys they wanted to leave with, and asked her to come. When she said no, because she's married they basically said see you later and took off without her, and without looking after her or making sure she got home. She's not familiar with the area, and so she stepped out to get her bearings, and I guess a few guys were yelling at her to show herself, and if she wanted some group fun or something to that effect, which upset her. She asked me to pick her up, so I went and got her. On the drive home, she was mostly quiet. I asked if she was okay, and she said yes, but it was just crazy how people are, and that she couldn't believe people would say things like that. That Sarah and Kate abandoned her and left her. I asked if there was anything I could do for her, and she said just be honest. What do you think about all of this? I asked what she thought was the reason things went the way they did. She said she didn't know. So I explained to her when you're in an environment where there's a bunch of single people, drinks are involved, and you're dressed a certain way, people are going to be touchy. I told her it wasn't her fault, and that no one should have to go through that, and that the men who harassed her were pieces of garbage. That this is why I avoid the environment entirely, and that I think Sarah and Kate are terrible friends. She honed in on how she was dressed, and told me I was victim blaming her and got super upset. I told her I wasn't blaming her for anything, that I was saying there are certain factors that all come into play. She said nothing and we rode home in silence. We went to sleep in silence and the next day she wouldn't really speak to me. The next day I get a text from Sarah saying that I'm a controlling piece of trash and that my wife should be able to do whatever she wants, whenever she wants. I responded and told her she should be able to, but we live in reality where it's not always advisable to put yourself in sketchy situations, especially when your friends take off and leave you alone in that situation. Now I have Sarah and Kate's ex-husbands texting me in our group chat saying I crossed the line with both my wife and Sarah, and my wife still won't talk to me. Now you can watch the second part by clicking share and more.